Okay, all right, otherwise, so welcome to Books and Bites. I am Jennifer. This is
Joan.
And this is
Julie.
Hi. So we're each gonna cover 5 books. We're gonna recommend 5 books that we have read and then we think that we enjoyed and hope that you will enjoy as well over the winter, especially during winter reading. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt us. If you need to step out for a moment, by all means, we're not holding you guys captive. And just for, I made the chocolate brownies, Jill made the pound cake, and Julie made the pumpkin muffins. So that's what everyone gets. All right, so with that in mind, we're going to, okay, we're gonna get started. Awesome.
Turn phones on.
Sure, that'd be great, if you think of it. If you get a phone call, by all means, you can step out and take it, that kind of thing. Okay. I'm gonna cooperate. Yes. All right, so I am first up. So this is Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. It is a mystery book and it came out last year in 2022. I've never read anything by Alice. This is my first time, but I really, really loved it. It was clever, innovative, and a definite page turner. It's a story that keeps you guessing right up until the end and then turns the tables in a very unexpected way. I was not expecting this ending at all. So the story of Daisy Darker and her family is one of unhappiness, rivalry, and they have a method of making all of its members kind of miserable, just general and with each other. Kind of a family filled with jealousy and petty revenge. Basically not a happy family. But there is one shining moment in their lives. They all adore their Nana, their grandmother, and they stay their summers with Nana in a remote kind of beach house kind of thing. Nana is a successful author of children's books, which means she's got money. Daisy, that comes up later, obviously. Daisy has 2 older sisters, divorced parents, and she, the poor thing, has a heart condition, which seems to condemn her to a shortened life. She's not really expected to live past middle age. Daisy, because of this, Daisy has always been sheltered. She's kind of been pushed into the background, kept in bubble wrap, kept safe. And she's been kind of forced to watch her sisters have an active life, parties, boys, college, watch them do all that while she's kind of stuck, where she is safe and sound. Now, Nana is 80 years old. She thinks she's kind of at the end of her life and she's ready to read her will. Why? That's always a mistake. So she invites her family, once again to her home on this remote island, to read the will, celebrate her 80th birthday party, because she's kind of feeling that the end is coming for her. So they all meet for Nana's 80th birthday party, and things are of course tense because it's a very dysfunctional family. But then at the stroke of midnight on Nana's 80th birthday, Nana is found dead. Is it an accident or something more sinister? Who knows? So this is very much following in the tradition of Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. As one by one, the family begins to get smaller and smaller with every strike of the clock. It's an exciting game of whodunit, as the list of suspects kind of gets smaller and smaller as we go towards sunrise. And you have a very limited cast of characters, so there's kind of only one culprit it could be, right? But despite that, Alice Feeney manages to surprise the reader and me, and offer up a wonderful, satisfying solution as to the culprit of what is actually happening. You'll be blown away by the plot twist at the end, and you just need to make it till dawn. All right, so that is Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney.
And has she written other things?
She has, yes. She's written a couple other things. This is my first one of hers. She is the author of Rock, Paper, Scissors. That is what came before it. She also has a new one coming up, I think, next year as well. So this is my first one of hers, and I think I will read more.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Oh, I have some room. Okay. Okay. So we're gonna move on to Joan.
Okay, Mr. Magic. the most bizarre book I have ever read. I'm just starting off with that. I thought, oh, I like the blurb in the journal. I'll read that. That sounds interesting. But it's very odd. Apparently, it's a group of adults who, as children, had been part of a television program. Now, that television program, contrary to every idea you ever had about the internet, does not appear anywhere online. You can't find it. There's no information about it. There are no episodes that you can scramble in and watch. So these children who are now adults are all collected for some nefarious purpose to go back and reintroduce themselves to Mr. Magic, whoever that person is. It's never clear who that is till the very end. We're not sure why things happened the way they did or why the production broke down. There was an incident, never defined. You don't find out till the very end, and then only when you read the authors afterward do you find out what it's all about. But I could not put it down. I kept thinking, soon this will make sense. Soon it will all add up. I'm pretty smart. I can figure this out. Made no sense at all to the read the author's notes, and I thought, okay, I might read this person again, because the next book can't be any odder. But it's very interesting. I mean, they're characters and you like the characters and they make sense and it's all good. It's just odd as hell. That's it. That's all I got. Unless you have a question.
So is the writing odd or just the plot is really
I'm
odd?
sorry,
Are the characters odd or the writing odd?
the whole precept of the novel
The premise.
is the premise, thank you, is unusual because nowhere is there explanation of what happened until you get 2/3 of the way through the novel. I kind of like beginning, middle, and end. I know that's my problem, but makes sense to me. I like that, but this does not give you beginning, middle, and end. It gives you end, middle, and somewhere at the end, it gives you part of the beginning.
Oh my gosh, okay.
It's just odd. I'm sorry. But it's not my usual mystery.
Yeah.
So hey, we're good here.
Cool. All right, awesome. We're gonna move on.
Oh, I'm sure.
All right, Julie, what you got?
Okay. I've got a piece of nonfiction, and I don't mean to be a troublemaker, but I love nonfiction. What I'm gonna talk about first is entitled The First Lady of World War II, Eleanor Roosevelt's Daring Journey to the Front Lines and Back. The author is historian Shannon McKenna Schmidt, and it was just released this year, so it's a 2023 release, yeah. During Franklin Roosevelt's tenure as President of the United States, his wife Eleanor, in military uniform, bucked the trend of our time. She acted on the conviction that she was as competent as any man. And with that conviction, she traveled, albeit in unannounced fashion, to the South Pacific, to Guadalcanal, to Christmas Island, to New Guinea, to Australia, and to New Zealand to visit the US troops and the military nursing staff. Now, she and she alone defined what the purpose of her trip would be, not her husband and not commanders of the US military. She did not expect to be coddled. She did not expect to receive exceptional treatment simply by virtue of her status as First Lady. What she did expect was to be taken seriously, to listen to the troops, to members of the nursing corps, and to enlisted men and women who had been physically injured during the fighting. That's exactly what she did. She was a morale booster, the likes of which had never before stepped forward in our nation's history. And she was an information gatherer for her husband, who, as you know, was confined to a wheelchair. For safety and security reasons, especially during wartime, her visits and travel plans were unannounced prior to her arrival at the various destinations. But once at a particular location, her visits were well documented. No other First Lady in the history of this country has displayed the courage, the conviction, and the determination of this woman. And if I thought highly of her before I read the book, I love her dearly now. And that's my recommendation, absolutely. And we do have an available copy in the library.
Alright, going on back to me, I also have a nonfiction. And this is a true crime, but there's not an inch of violence or any murder, it's just, it's actually, an art theft. A heist kind of thing. So this is The Art Thief, a true story of love, crime, and a dangerous obsession by Michael Finkel. Came out this year, 2023, and it was a bestseller for a while, and I think it still might be. So we have here, usually when you think art thieves, you think people who are stealing art to sell it for financial gain, to make a quick buck on the black market. After all, who would steal irreplaceable, breathtaking, expensive works of art just to look at them from your kitchen table as you drink coffee in the morning? It seems a little much. Just get the printout. It would even be stranger if the thief refused to monetize on a $2 billion collection, especially when that person is an unemployed freeloader living in his mother's attic. You think he could use some money. But this is the true story of the art thievery of Stefan German, Rootweisner and his girlfriend Anne Catherine Kleinklaus. I'm saying that all wrong, but that's okay. Their thefts, this couple committed numerous thefts. I mean, numerous, like over 300 art pieces of art were stolen over several years. They would sometimes commit multiple thefts from the same day, even from the same place. They never used weapons, never committed any violence, and never sold a single piece. The couple would steal in broad daylight from museums and churches and collections all over Europe. England, France, Germany, Belgium, all over. So this book is about art, yes, but it's also about a man who grew to be a larger version of the indulgent, spoiled boy who was enabled by every step by his family. They excused him at every turn, and he had a girlfriend who helped him at every turn. So the book is about art, it's about stealing, and it's also about the strange relationships between people and art and how people get extremely attached to art. It kind of speaks to your soul and you just get intensely focused on things if it really does speak to you. Finkel, the author, presents his story without any flourishes. He keeps it very compact. It's less than 300 pages. It's a very quick read. He tells you everything you can know without any long speeches about art or the history, kind of nice and brief. This is not an art history class. And he does not attempt to diagnose or excuse Rootweiser. He lets the story tell itself. And oh boy, it's a doozy. He has interviewed Stefan numerous times to get this story. I highly recommend it for everyone, and so does the New York Times. You just want to shake the couple and go, what were you thinking? But yeah, it was a very, very fun read, quick read, and just, it definitely holds your interest. So yeah, this is The Art Thief. All right, moving on.
Okay, it's back to my mysteries, people. This is The White Shepherd and Oxford Dog Walkers Mystery by Annie Dalton. It's 2015. There are 3 books in this series. Nicely encapsulated, you know, you have a beginning. Each book, but they also, the last book ties up all the little pieces, which is really good. Anyway, it's the story of a woman who adopts a dog from a shelter. She finds out who the dog originally belonged to, gets involved with that person who was serving overseas. Anyway, she and the dog are out walking in a big park. There's a regular gang of them that walk their dogs in this park, and the dogs find one of the usual dog walkers who's been killed. And the 3 of them and their dogs get together, they become friends, and they try and figure out what happened to the dog walker. It's very nice, it's British. I mean, what's not to like? They're all so well mannered, really. But there are 2 more books in this series. I found them all, they're all over there. And as the series progresses, you find out more about them, and at the end of the 3rd book, everyone is happy. It made my heart so happy because, you know, so often people are, you know, they're okay, but they're not happy. And I thought I needed something where, you know, it ended nicely. And this is a sweet little 3-book series all about dogs and their owners and a little bit of mystery or murder, but not enough to put you off. I mean, really, I just really liked it because
How many
it was
pages?
so
How
reassuring.
many pages? Are they quick reads?
Yeah, pretty quick, pretty quick. I mean, I have a lot of calls at my time that I don't usually get to sit and just read. There's always some other chore to do. So, yes, but the story keeps you in it, even if you have to come away from it for a little bit.
Well, 600-page books are tough.
No, they're only like 250, 300 pages and not bad, not bad. And that's it. That's all there is.
I'm back to another non-fiction selection. I live in the real world. Kidding. It's a joke. No, it's a joke.
It's overrated.
Very good. The book I'd like to talk about is entitled Tunnel 29. It's the true story of an extraordinary escape beneath the Berlin Wall. Why did I choose this book? I chose it on the heels of a trip that my adult son, husband, and I took this past summer to Berlin. And suffice it to say that that was the initial impetus.
The catalyst.
The catalyst. The freedom to come and go from state to state and from one city to another as we please, without fear of being gunned down and without the need to show proof of who we are, is taken for granted by people who live in this country. In the aftermath of World War II, that was not the case in East Berlin with the rise of the Stasi, a secret police force that was the brainchild of Erich Mielke and was created in the image of the Russian KGB. Walter Ulbricht, a German communist and head of the East German government, alarmed at the number of East Germans who were leaving East Berlin, made it a crime to leave East Germany. And that's where the reader is introduced to a small number of college-age students who succeed in digging a tunnel from East Berlin to West Berlin, the purpose of which was to enable East Berliners to escape the tyrannies under which they lived at the time. Now, it's not as easy as it sounds when one considers that the East German police were ordered to shoot and kill any individual in East Berlin who was attempting to escape into West Berlin. Not as easy as it sounds when any activity deemed suspicious by the Stasi police could be uncovered, and the police were trained to listen for abnormal activity, among which were subterranean sounds of construction. For those who do choose to read this title, I will not share what occurs in this nonfiction recounting, but suffice it to say that this is yet another very sad piece of history. And it's called Tunnel 29.
Brought the energy down. All right, cool. All right, so this is not a real thing. So this is a mystery. It is called Murder Your Lawyer, the McMaster's Guide to Homicide, by Rupert Holmes. It came out this year, 2023. So Murder Your Employer is the clever brainchild of author, playwright, composer, and singer-songwriter Rupert Holmes. He's the guy who did Escape, you know, the Pina Colada song. He tried his hand at writing, and it's actually pretty good. All right, so full of endless puns, dry humor, and the nostalgia for the 1950s. Murder Your Employer chronicles the experiences of students at McMaster's Conservatory for the Applied Arts, a finishing school that teaches one how to finish people off. We follow, it's really funny. We follow three pupils, a Baltimore engineer, a British hospital worker, and an incognito Hollywood star, all adults, ordinary adults, who have been pushed to the brink by their terrible employers. They're now enrolled at the school, you know, kind of a secondary college. And they learn how to best terminate their bosses using a wide range of skills that are right out of a spy thriller. The first half is a slow burn with a focus on campus life, the teachers, the students, and an idyllic setting of an unknown location. But once the student sets foot on campus, there are only two ways to depart. Either as a fully accredited graduate who has successfully finished their term paper, let's say, or in a very attractive urn. So it's high stakes here. The second half of the novel picks up pace considerably as our three main students execute their final thesis, and they have to delete their targets without getting caught. Here Holmes successfully turns the murder mystery genre on upside down by making us root for our very good-hearted killers, let's say, and their terrible bosses who might deserve it. Who knew planning murder could be such fun? This book was a hilarious mix of wordplay, punnery, and delightful satire. So even though it is a murder mystery, it is very fun and very, full of humor. On the cover, it does say volume 1, which makes me hopeful that maybe there could be a sequel in the future. There's nothing confirmed yet, but there's definitely, room for him to keep going, to grow. And there might just be
everybody off, or there's some people left for volume 2?
No. So, I mean, who knows, maybe in volume 2, we'll get introduced to new students, or maybe it'll take a different twist to it. But definitely, it was a fun read. It's fun, it's unusual, and you definitely get that 1950s vibe from it. Which
Lighthearted, eh?
Well, like that, but like the technology, there is not. The way, maybe the way people are maybe the way people speak, the dress, the food, you definitely get the 1950s kind of feel to it.
Give it to your boss for Christmas.
Yeah, or we get in the break room.
I was saying, like, people would check out the book just to put it on your
Yeah.
work desk.
Yeah, we get in the break room, it's a nonfiction. So yeah, very, very fun, very cute. All right, cool. All right, we're gonna move on back to Joan.
Killers of the Flower Moon. The Osage murders and the birth of the FBI. It's nonfiction. We've all heard about Scorsese's movie, right? I've not seen it.
Yeah, I haven't heard.
I probably won't because my suspicion is if you have Leonardo DiCaprio, he's gonna be more focused than the Osage women who are the actual people being murdered by their white spouses. Anyway, the Osage were in northeast Oklahoma. They happened to be on a reservation that had a great amount of oil underneath. Despite the government's best efforts, they did not sign away their rights to the minerals. So they were some of the most wealthy people in the United States once oil was found. But the federal government, in its infinite wisdom, decided that they needed people to look after them. So if you were Indian and you married a white man, he made the decisions for you. Well, that's great, I guess, but if you have a greedy husband, he would rather see your mineral rights and the rights to all the oil money go to him than to be funneled through her and then to him. So there were a great number of Osage women who had mineral rights who were killed, and the Osage appealed to Washington, and they appealed to the state, and they appealed to the local sheriff and constabulary, and finally, someone in Washington began to listen, and they sent people out. Those were the beginning of the FBI to investigate and see what the story was. It's not a happy story,
No.
but it's a lot more true to life than what's in a movie. So if you have a chance, go and see the movie, read the book, find out what really happened.
Yeah.
Just as an aside, this fellow, David Grand, also wrote Friday Night Lights. So, which is, Texas football. So he has some familiarity with that lower Midwest world. It's a very interesting book, yes.
What year was that? Did that happen?
Did you see them?
I'm sorry?
What year did that happen? What time period?
Oh, it happened in the 20s. In the 20s. And there were these Osage women driving around in big limos, and they built big houses. Well, their husbands really had not much to say about how they spent their money, because it was their money. And, if you're greedy and you don't want to wait for them to die of natural causes, you figure nobody will really look. People got shot and, I can't find any bullet holes. She must have just fallen from the carriage. Okay. No, but that's the sort of thing that went on, and the local lawmen had no incentive to, because they were just Indian women. They didn't really count.
Yeah.
It was not a good situation. I'm not sure that it has changed dramatically for the indigenous peoples of the United States, because they still have a lot of money tied up in government overseeing their royalties from minerals and natural rights, and so they don't exactly get what they're owed even now.
Oh, definitely.
So we'll see what happens. Anyway, the movie's supposed to be really interesting. I'm not gonna go and see it. I mean, I guess they're going to, you know, eliminate so many things that made it make sense in the book. But, you know, if you like Leo.
The woman that plays, she is.
Yeah, most of the,
Yeah,
most of the
yeah.
female actresses are.
Yeah, the women are
I like that.
Native American women, which to give Scorsese credit
Mm.
is a good thing.
Yeah.
But from all reports, the impact that the movie and the movie industry had on that part of Oklahoma was minimal. So it's not like there was a real positive impact for them. But, you know, that's not their job, I guess. Their job is to make the movie and rake in the dough. So. Wow. Woo, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be cynical.
No.
It's just so depressing. Whatever. Go right ahead.
Okay, I've got another piece of nonfiction for you.
Shocking.
Oh, I'll come around.
Yeah.
I was told I had to, so.
Not to.
This is, the book is entitled Golda Meir, Israel's Matriarch. It is also a 2023 release, so it's a very recent book. And it's written by a professor of modern Jewish history and Holocaust studies at Emory University. This is an in-depth biography of Golda Meir. She was born as Golda Mabovich or Mabovich in 1898 in Kiev, Russia. She emigrated with her family to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Talk about culture. She married while in the US, had 2 children, and she pressed her husband Morris Meyerson to move to what was then Palestine. He complied. She sought out the communal life of the kibbutz. Her husband wasn't all that thrilled, but Morris complied. They separated eventually. Morris moved to the city. She stayed behind. She did have 2 children. She speaks of them. I will not pass judgment on her, but the focus, at least, of this historian is not that of Golda's family life, but rather her rise to the position of prime minister, the only female prime minister, or the first, I should say, female prime minister of Israel. I'd like to just read a small section of the epilogue, only because there are, when I was reading the book itself, I assumed going into the book, and full disclosure, I am Jewish. So I've been very, very much aware of Israeli politics. I was very, very much aware of who Golda was. Well, suffice it to say, let me do this, the little section 2. This is the epilogue. I began by asking, who is the real Golda Meir? An amalgam of many things. She was an immigrant a number of times over, having moved from Russia to America, from America to the Yishuv, from the kibbutz to the loneliness and despair of a Jerusalem existence, and then to the embrace of her fellow labor Zionists, whom she devotedly and eagerly built, or with whom she devotedly and eagerly built a state. To this multifaceted amalgam, she brought strong personality traits. She was predisposed to act when the times demanded it. We have seen repeated examples of how she shaped her own future without the support of those around her. At age 14, she fled from her parents in order to get a decent education. She gave street corner harangues despite her father's objections. She insisted on joining a kibbutz, even though any discerning person could have assessed that this was not the place for her husband. She told the man she loved that she hoped he would come with her. The fact that this was her, not his decision, was evident in the recollection she shared with members of her daughter's kibbutz in the early 1970s. And the epilogue continues, but I'll stop there. Suffice it to say that Deborah Lipstadt, who is a professor of Jewish studies at Emory University down south, really dug in. This is not a superficial account of a woman for the purpose of glorifying her. You learn, and some of the names were familiar to me, some of the names were not, in the Israeli political world. With whom Golda got along, with whom she did not get along. But suffice it to say, at the time she retired, she was a much beloved figure among Israelis. And again, this is Golda Meir, Israel's matriarch, by Deborah Lipstadt.
All right.
Wow. Well, an astounding woman.
She was.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna switch gears here. So this is The Deep by Alma Katsu. This came out in 2020, so it's been a while. I'm a sucker for anything about the Titanic. Movie, fiction, nonfiction, I love it all. So one sentence describing this book would be a ghost story on the Titanic. And it is satisfyingly ominous with dread of the tragedy just creeping in. It is historical fiction, with a twist of the paranormal. Our main character is Anna Headley, who survived the sinking of the Titanic. Spoilers, I mean, it's been 100 years, but I imagine we all know by now. So the event has left her mentally scarred, and she still has nightmares about all the strange events and the tragedy that happened aboard the doomed ship as it sailed on its ill-fated maiden voyage. But years later, a friend contacts her to invite her to become a nurse aboard Titanic's sister ship, the Britannic, during World War I. Even though the Britannic has been retrofitted into a hospital ship, Annie can still see the resemblance of Titanic. It was a sister ship, so they're very similar. And as such, with all the seeing everything once again, all the terrible memories come flooding back, nice and fresh. And then as that, at the same time, some strange, bizarre things start happening once again. And Annie sees someone on the Britannic, a man who was also aboard the Titanic, a man who she is convinced could not have possibly survived. But how is he here once again? The story alternates between Annie's trip on the Titanic in 1912 as a maid, and also her journey on the hospital ship, the Britannic, in 1916. So I know the time shifts can be tough, but the alternate timelines going back and forth really heightens the suspense, especially if you are aware of the fate of both ships. Hint, it's not good. You get a smattering of historical facts, and people and persons, in between the more fictionalized events. This is very much historical fiction. This is kind of like the famous movie we all know. You know, obviously that was not a true story, but there were true events, true people in that movie that you can kind of put and go, oh, I remember that. It's not.
Are you sure?
I'm very confident.
I was under the impression.
Jack could have
it was a
survived.
documentary.
There was room on that raft. Sorry. So this kind of book is a standard of Alma Katsu. It is my first one of hers, but in my investigations, I've seen that she takes very ominous, maybe tragic historical events and makes them more eerie, more kind of a supernatural thing to it. Examples include she's done a book on the Donner Party, for those anyone who might remember. And the Japanese internment camp of World War II, she's done a book on that, where she's taken historical events and gives them a little supernatural twist with a little ominous to it. Both of which are now on my to-be read list. This is my first one of hers, and it was very, very interesting, and I love the whole Titanic feel of it, so loved it. All right, very nice.
I love it. Say it's interesting.
It's interesting.
And is everything interesting or?
Just All right, let's pass it back to you.
We're moving right along. We're back to another mystery, folks. This is another, this is Murder in Chianti by Camilla Trincieri. I'm not Italian, so if I got it wrong, I apologize. It's one of 3 books that this woman has written. There is another one coming out. I already have a hold on it. I'm ready for it. New York cop has been married to an Italian woman for years. She dies unexpectedly. So he has no family left in the States, so he goes to her home village in Tuscany. Of course, she'd say, there are no murders in Tuscany that are done by the mafia. Of course, he gets there and right off the bat, there's a murder, and most of the people don't know he's a retired New York police homicide guy. Except there are 1 or 2 who suggest that he might, help out the local carabinieri or carabinieri? I don't know, Carabinieri. I don't.
Carabinieri. She said. Carabinieri.
Okay, Carabinieri. Oh,
Carabinieri.
Carabinieri. And when I look at you. So he does, and he finds out about being a little stray dog, and he makes friends, and it's a nice little story. It's not shoot 'em up, bang, bang. It's things that wouldn't necessarily make sense to us, given our exposure to more murders than most. It's a very Italian murder. And the next few books similar, which is, kind of nice. It's not as mean as some of our murders are, which is, not to say that it's a good thing. It's just a different quality of murder. Okay, that's a better description. Anyway, I really enjoyed it. Of course, they keep describing pastries, and I keep wanting to know, what exactly are those? So I spend my life on Google typing in, names of pastries, morning pastries. Still good. Doesn't matter. There are no calories associated.
Are there any recipes in there? Are there any recipes in the book?
No recipes. No, are cozy mysteries. This is not a cozy mystery. No, those are others you've done. Anyway, so 3 books and another to come out in the spring. So, yeah, it's nice. I liked it. Okay.
Once again, I'm focusing on nonfiction, but this gentleman is a very pretty sight. And the title is Being Henry, The Fonz and Beyond by Henry Winkler. We're talking about a gentleman who was the son of German Jews who had emigrated to New York. They had very, very high expectations for him. I think he would have been happier had they left him alone.
Yeah.
He also was dyslexic,
Yeah.
which was, I'd say, a cause of great upset and self-doubting.
And when he grew up, they didn't necessarily know how to diagnose it or treat it.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. He speaks of meeting his wife after some unsuccessful dating ventures. And you're treated to photographs in the book, some of which I think sum up the source of his happiness.
Oh, good.
I mean, he had and continues to have a very successful marriage with a woman of whom he thinks the world. He has children, he has grandchildren. I believe, although I'm not gonna take your time and go running back, he may even have a great grandchild, but there I'm not 100% sure. It's interesting though, that as he writes, his parents are always figuring back, with, moments of irritation. He's clearly wed to them emotionally. But I think he felt that they could have been more understanding of him as an individual and of what he saw as a career for himself. And I think they would have been happier had he followed the family, basically.
Oh, yeah.
But it's very well written. It's not all that long, as you can see. And it portrays him as being very humane, or very human.
Yeah.
Humane as well, but very human, which is a good thing. So that's Being Henry, The Farms and Beyond.
Just adds to his appeal.
Oh, it most definitely does.
Yeah.
Leather jacket or not.
Ladies, I have to take off. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good ideas.
Well, we're glad you came.
Thanks for coming.
Cool, all right, we're in the final stretch, one more from each of us. So my next one is, The Only One Left by Riley Sager. It came out this year in 2023, and it is a fiction book. All right, so here we have. So here we have a home health aide, her name is Kit McDeer, and she has a new assignment with a rather infamous client. Kit is headed to Hope's End, a once lavish estate now perched on a rocky cliff in Maine that is slowly decaying, leading ever closer to the sea below. And inside this mansion is Lenora Hope, Kit's newest client, and the sole survivor and main suspect of the Hope family massacre of 1929. These crimes were so infamous in the area that there's even a creepy little song about it in the style of a Lizzie Borden rhyme. But regardless of her past, Lenora is now a woman in her 70s. She's been left mute and incapacitated by a series of strokes. She is confined to a wheelchair, and Lenora is very much dependent on Kit for her daily care, with her only means of communication through an old typewriter. She can't speak, can't really move much, she can just type on a typewriter. One night, through her typing, Lenora makes Kit an offer. She says, I want to tell you everything that happened in 1929. She's ready to confess, she's ready to reveal all. But is Kit ready to hear the truth? This was a very dangerous book, it felt like. The setting of Hope Manor was fantastic, and there's so much history in this Gothic house from the 1920s on until the 1980s, which was where this the main story takes place in. You feel like the manor is its own character so much that it gets described as. Love the use of the typewriter for Lenore to tell Kit her story. There's something very ominous, I keep using the word, about the act, painstakingly watching each letter appear as Lenora slowly and methodically types out her story. There are very, very, well done red herrings as the truth is slowly revealed in this book. And you'll pretty much just suspect everyone. Pretty much everyone, to be honest, which is just fine. You get a lot of twists and turns, and Sager very, well builds up the intensity of the story as it progresses. It's a novel that feels dangerous the whole time. It's a tale on the edge of a cliff, pun intended. But yeah, otherwise very engrossing, you'll remember it, I promise you that. And he has several other books. This is my first one of his. And he's got a new one coming as well, and there's plenty others to read in his catalog if you enjoy his writing. Yeah. Very nice. All right, cool. And we're going to move on to Joan.
Nonfiction.
Hey.
Don't worry, now you can all relax. The Mosquito Coast. I'm sorry, the Mosquito Bowl, a game of life and death in World War II. It takes place in Guadalcanal after they've taken the island from the Japanese. The Marines are there, they're waiting and waiting and waiting to begin the invasion of Japan, which they know is coming next because there's not much left to hit before they reach the final end of this awful war. Well, Marines they're not calm guys. They're full of testosterone. They're highly competitive. And things began to get a little unruly. So it turns out that the 4th and 29th regiments of the Marines were there, and they were having I'd call it a spitting contest. Who was bigger and badder and better? Well, it turns out that both of these regiments had a number of people who had been football players in college, some even in the pros, some waiting to be drafted by the pros. And it was decided that they would have a football game between the two regiments, which sounded like a great idea. Of course, there were no helmets, there were no pads, there were no shoes. The island of Guadalcanal is a coral island, and while there's sand, it's not exactly kind to your body when you crash into coral. Well, this is the story of the people who played that game and what happened to them after the Mosquito Bowl and after they were off continuing their wars. Many of them did not make it. There was a high attrition rate, I think is the best way to phrase it, for many of these football players. But you get to have a sense of who they were and what they were fighting for. And it was kind of a moment out of time during this war when they could be kids again, playing a game. And they didn't have to worry about being shot by a sniper or hit by a bomb. So it's very interesting. It's, I don't know, not a happy book, but it's a relief to know that they had a game that they were able to play in the middle of a war. Something that reminded them of not being in a war. That was it. I mean, it's very touching. Oh, I can't believe I said that. I don't call things touching. Anyway,
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, you're good.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just wondering, is that politically incorrect or what?
For my personality. I'm not a big touchy-feely kind of person. I tend to make a joke out of things, so it was touching because you knew so many of them were not going to make it, or if they made it, There would not be the same people at the end of the war. So yes, it's not that it's politically incorrect, but it does harm my image. Okay, so, yes, George.
We won't spread that around.
No, don't tell.
I'd say at least 20, if not more than 20 years ago, this library was very fortunate to have an author by the name of James McBride come and speak about his first book. It is entitled The Color of Water. And I remember reading it at that time and falling in love with it. And falling in love with the author as well, who was so decent and so humane and so caring. And I don't think for one second that it was being done just to sell books.
Oh, no.
You can't hoodwink people to that degree. Well, James McBride has a very recent release. This is a number of well-known novels later. And this one is entitled The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store. And this is the one piece of fiction that I chose to talk about. It was just released this year. McBride focuses on the inhabitants of Chicken Hill, which is a neighborhood in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, where Jewish immigrants Hannah and Moshe Ludlow owned the Heaven and Earth Grocery Store. It was run by Hannah, who was a young and attractive woman who treated all of her customers with great kindness. And much to her husband's distress, it was not a money-making venture, because although Hannah had a wonderful heart, she was not a good businesswoman. Their customers knew they would be treated fairly and with compassion and understanding. I should say McBride shares with his readers the politics of Chicken Hill, the shady deals, the affronts, the assaults, the business of its residents, venturing beyond it to the treatment of young male inmates at the Penhurst Asylum, which is a real asylum that existed, by monsters who masqueraded as qualified medical aides, while mistreating and sexually assaulting its helpless male inmates. By looking ahead into the present, McBride also helps the reader move on from the injustices that he has just shared with them, focusing on the decency of Chicken Hill's inhabitants and what has become of them. If anything, this book, like those written by McBride before it, I feel will help to make the world a better place. And so I recommend The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James. And it was written just this year.
I met him, Judy. I met him.
Did you?
When he came, The Color of Water.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Absolutely.
And you're right. He's a very, very nice gentleman.
Oh, truly was.
He really was.
Yes.
Yeah, a long time ago.
It was.
Well, I'm sure it doesn't change that much.
More than 20 years ago.
Wow.
We're not talking ages here. Just-
You know, it was good,
Just
Julie,
if not nicer.
when he was talking about his mom.
Yeah.
She lived in California and she drove a Cadillac and she was 90 years old at that time.
Wow.
We all have to a good picture it. Not in California anyway.
Thanks for the written freely.
So that's it for us. We did 15 books. That's all we could read. But if you kind of like this thing, we're doing something similar in January. We're doing kind of book tastings where we're highlighting some of the most anticipated books coming out in the coming year, 2024. These are books we haven't read yet, obviously, but books that we are excited about and we'll share with you. So thank you all for attending. grab some food, grab some books. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.